Hello, my name is Leo Hicker, reporting on a week of weather observations I made from March 18th to March 22nd, 2019. My observations were made between 9:15 and 9:45 in the morning, Alaska Daylight Time. I'm located in Wiseman, Alaska, and is where my observations were made, and the National Weather Service site I am referencing is located in Bettles, which is approximately 50 miles to the southeast of me here in Wiseman. My last observation was made on Friday, the 22nd of March 2019 at 9:15 in the morning. My observation was made at the mouth of Wiseman Creek in Wiseman, Alaska. The left probe of my digital thermometer measured 18.8 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 7.3 Celsius, and the right probe measured 19.1 Fahrenheit, negative 7.1 Celsius. The maximum temperature for the previous 24 hours was 25.8 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 3.4 Celsius on the left probe, and 25.8 Fahrenheit, negative 3.4 on the right probe. The 24-hour minimum was 7.8 Fahrenheit and negative 13.4 Celsius on the left probe, and 8.3 Fahrenheit, negative 3.2 Celsius on the right probe. The barometric pressure was 1,009.1 millibars, and the winds were coming out of 360 at a Beaufort number of 4. The sky cover was one-half covered with altostratus clouds with no precipitation. Down at the bottom, I have all my D1 through D4 data for min-max temperatures throughout the week, and is what I used for my temperature plot. On Monday, the 18th of March, I made my observation at 9:15 in the morning, and it was 30.5 degrees Fahrenheit. The sky was three-quarter covered with stratus clouds that I observed to be clearing as I made my observation. There was no precipitation or wind that day. The minimum and maximum temperatures for the preceding 24 hours were a maximum of 32 Fahrenheit and a minimum of 27 Fahrenheit. The National Weather Service temperature at the same time of my observation was 27 degrees Fahrenheit, and matches pretty well with the 30.5 that I observed at that time. On Tuesday, the 19th of March, 2019, I made my observation at 9:30 in the morning, and it was 24 degrees Fahrenheit. The sky was three-quarters covered with stratus clouds. It was snowing lightly, but it was difficult to tell as it was very windy, and some of the snow I observed may have been blowing snow. The winds were coming from 180 degrees at a Beaufort number of 7. Entire trees were moving. I could feel the wind resistance against my body when I was walking. It was extremely windy out. The minimum maximum temperatures observed for the 24 hours prior were a maximum of 30 degrees Fahrenheit and a minimum of 23 degrees Fahrenheit. The National Weather Service temperature at that time in Bettles, which is a ways away from me, was 13 degrees Fahrenheit, which is appreciably lower than the 24 I observed at that time, and I think it was because the temperature in Bettles dropped slightly before it did by me, as the temperatures dropped here in Wiseman the following day. On Wednesday, the 20th, I made my observation at 9:45 in the morning. It was 7 below Fahrenheit, with approximately a quarter of sky covered with just a few thin cirrostratus clouds. There was no precipitation. The wind was coming out of 350 with a Beaufort number of 4. There was small branches moving, and I could feel the wind on my face. The minimum and maximum temperatures for the preceding 24 hours were a maximum of 6 Fahrenheit and a minimum of 25 below Fahrenheit. The National Weather Service was reporting negative 1 Fahrenheit, which is relatively similar to the negative 7 that I was observing. For Thursday, the 21st, I made my observation at 9:30 in the morning, and it was 18 degrees Fahrenheit. The sky was approximately one-half covered with altocumulus clouds. There was no precipitation. The winds were again coming out of 350, but this time with a Beaufort number of 3, with small twigs moving. For the min-max temperatures, the maximum was 21 Fahrenheit, and the minimum was 17 Fahrenheit. The National Weather Service's temperature at the time of my observation was 22 Fahrenheit, which is pretty similar to my observed 18. And finally, for Friday, the 22nd, I made my observation at 9:15 in the morning. It was 19 degrees Fahrenheit, and the sky was one-half covered in altostratus clouds. There was no precipitation. The winds were coming out of 360 at, again, a B4. Small branches were moving in the wind, and I could, distinctly feel the wind on my face. The minimum and maximum temperatures were a maximum of 26 Fahrenheit and a minimum of 8 Fahrenheit. The National Weather Service was reporting 14 degrees Fahrenheit at the same time as I made my observation, which is pretty close to my observed 19 degrees Fahrenheit. As for overall temperature trends throughout the week, I started relatively warm and then dropped very sharply by the third day, by the night of the 20th and the morning of the 20th when I made my observation. There was an extreme dip in temperature, with my minimum all the way down at negative 25. And then after that, the temperature climbed again and leveled off toward the rest of the week. The National Weather Service site in Bettles has a almost identical trend to what I observed and matches very well. As for the barometric pressure, I have a trend where I start relatively in a gentle climb and then a very sharp, drastic climb into the middle of the week, which corresponds to my coldest temperatures and clearest skies, and then dropping again toward the end of the week. This, again, trends very well with the National Weather Service site, and you may notice that my barometric pressure and my temperature graphs are almost completely perfect mirror images of each other, which makes sense considering the movement of pressure systems and clearing skies. Next, we move on to the weather maps. The purple star that I placed on all of these maps approximately shows my location here in Wiseman. So on Monday, there was some cloud cover shown across the state in various thicknesses, with thinner clouds here on the north and even some clear areas just to the east of me here, which does trend pretty well with the clearing skies that I was seeing on Monday. There's a large high-pressure system to the west of Wiseman and a low pressure directly to the south. It's a bit of a trough here over Wiseman, which trends well with my pressure that I was seeing. There's a front moving up from the southeast here, and what looks like a large low developing down here over the Gulf. By Tuesday, the low that was to the south of me have moved up and is now directly overhead. There are some widespread thin clouds kind of all over the state, which again is matching pretty well with what I observed on Tuesday with some stratus clouds. There's a high pressure system off the west coast of Alaska with a cold front moving toward the east, toward me from over Siberia and the ocean. There's another low front to the northeast of me, and that large low over the Gulf has moved up a little bit, bringing along with it an occluded front. There's a cold front that just passed over me right at the time of this map. By Wednesday, conditions have changed pretty drastically, with all the smaller highs and lows and fronts kind of disappearing altogether, and all kind of being dominated by this large low over the Gulf and this stationary front here just to the south of me, south and southeast of me. There are still two high pressures way to the northeast of me, and again widespread cloud cover across the state, which shows some high patches and some thin patches here, and I definitely observed only a few cirrostratus clouds at the time of my observation on Wednesday. On Thursday, March 21st, this low over the Gulf has intensified, and there's a pretty serious occluded front associated with that, along with the classic comma cloud coming off of it. There's a low moving in toward my location again, with that stationary front kind of reappearing, but staying stationary to the south and southeast of me. There's some mixed cloud cover with some clouds on the western side of the state and some clear air toward the east. On Thursday, just as a reminder, I observed about approximately 1/2 sky cover of alto cumulus, which can can be seen here with these kind of patchy clouds in my area. There's another low pressure developing over Canada to the northeast of me with a couple fronts moving in association with it, and a high pressure pushing in the northwest. And finally on Friday, that low has moved up some more. It's weakened a bit with some wider spacing between isobars. Another low moving in the Gulf as well, and that occluded front kind of pushing up through the state. Behind that occluded front, a little bit of clear air, it looks like, and some clear air over here by Canada, and some pretty good cloudiness over me here, where I was seeing some altostratus clouds. High pressure is staying up here over the Arctic Ocean, and overall just a pretty uniform system here, all being dominated off this low. Definitely bring some moisture in for these clouds to develop. The cloudiness observed on the weather maps here in general matched what I was observing pretty well, with relatively consistent cloud cover, but of varying degrees. Now, to take us back to my pressure trend, we'll just be reminded of that I had relatively low pressure at the beginning of the week, spiking in the middle, and then dropping again toward the end. If we look at this throughout the week on the maps, we'll see that I had this trough located directly over me on Monday, which signifies or corresponds to that low pressure I report. Staying relatively low pressure into the second day as this low moves over me. And by the third day, those lows have kind of moved away, and I'm on the fringes of this big low, but also this high here, definitely accounting for that spike in pressure that I observed. Also, this reduced cloud cover is making it relatively cold. And then here this low is pushing in again, dropping my pressure again throughout the rest of the week. Finally, another note to look at here is on the 19th, which is where I observed the Beaufort number of 7, so extremely strong winds, would be associated with the passage of this cold front here. It was a very fast-moving front from the conditions I observed here, and resulted in those strong winds. Next, we'll take a look at some of the satellite images here. Just as a reminder, on the 21st here, I was reporting approximately 18 degrees Fahrenheit and 1/2 sky covered with altocumulus. The 1/2 sky cover and altocumulus matches very well what we see here in the visible, with some clouds kicking around kind of to the northwest of me, and some clearer skies to the southeast of me, with me being kind of right on the border between that. And you can see some slight rolls and modulations to the clouds, which match my observation of altocumulus pretty well. The infrared image here definitely agrees with what I was seeing, that these clouds were relatively high, the few that there were, and other than that, being relatively clear air. The water vapor image shows some moisture kicking around, again, kind of in these bands of clouds that we're seeing in the infrared and visible images, and me, again, being kind of right on the edge of the clearer skies and the cloudier regions. Moving on to the forecasting methods I experimented with. The persistence method for the time that I did the calculations were dead on for the 3 and 5 day forecasts, with the temperatures being within a couple degrees for both the 3 and 5 day forecasts, based off the Monday average temperatures. I think that the relatively consistent cloud cover throughout the week helped keep those temperatures pretty persistent, and there definitely was a relatively persistent cloud cover throughout this week. As far as the climatological forecast, it was horribly inaccurate, with the forecast being 16 degrees colder than the average observed on the 21st. I think this has to do with possibly some of the cloud covers keeping a little bit warmer than average temperatures, but this week has been far warmer than average overall, as has been this entire April and March. Overall, my observations went quite well. I didn't have any major hiccups or issues with anything, and it's been an interesting learning experience. And finally, here's a photo of a cloud my mom took and gave to me that I found to be quite interesting. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my presentation.